All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for attending our webinar today. My name is Ashley Members, and I'm the marketing lead here at Encompass Solutions. At Encompass, we specialize in ERP consulting and implementation to help manufacturers like you solve challenges, streamline operations, and drive growth. And as a premier partner of Epicor, we deliver tailored ERP solutions that empower businesses to succeed. Harvey, if you could just transition. We are headquartered in North Carolina and have been in business for over 24 years. We're just over 40 staff members around the globe. And our focus is on manufacturing and distribution, primarily using Epicor software. One of the characteristics that makes Encompass Solutions stands out is that we're very partner focused. We go to the next slide. Thank you. We have almost 20 years of experience selling Epicor software while being part of our premier part of the program. We have a certified team of consultants that partners with businesses like yours to help with ERP implementations, software enhancements, customizations, and reporting. And today we are exploring FP&A presented by Harvey Brown on the next stage. Just a few things before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a copy of that recording will be emailed to you. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel, and we'll bring them up during our Q&A session at the end. We also encourage you to take our survey after today's event. Our first speaker, Harvey Brown, our advanced support analyst, supports Epicor clients by maintaining their systems and infrastructure and creating bespoke solutions to their individual needs. And our next speaker, next stage, is a senior solutions engineer with Epicor, who focuses on accounting and finance functionality. He lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and his wife and 3 boys. And before joining Epicor about 2 years ago, Nick worked for Microsoft and Oracle in a solution engineering capacity. With more than a decade working in accounting and finance, Nick has had several positions and titles, including corporate accountant, financial analyst, and system administrator. And Nick holds a degree in accounting from Michigan Tech. Now, without further ado, we'll go ahead and turn our time over to Harvey.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Ashley. So yeah, I'm just gonna begin and start talking about the FP&A. This is kind of just a quick agenda of the topics we're going to hit. We'll talk about focus areas, value propositions, packaging, and then, as Ashley explained, we will have some time for a demo and for a Q&A session. So FP&A for the makers, movers, and sellers to be deeply integrated and really effective, and it has to offer quick time value. This is kind of the core focus of what this program is to do. So we have 3 main focus areas: finance automation for the makers, movers, and sellers. This is vision and reality, which is for both kind of hypothetical and practical finance applications. Reduction of non-value tasks, i.e. trimming the fat from processes to make sure everything flows smoothly and swiftly, and then using KPI and driver-based forecasts for business value focus, using hard data points to solidify plans and to plan for value. And speaking of value, so we're going up vertical and horizontal with this to market understanding, profitability, key metrics, and drivers. So forward-looking, it's using a suite of tools and reports, including machine learning, to really kind of focus on what your finance processes need, and to make sure that the reports built in are going to meet those needs. So the FP&A is designed to be rapidly integrated into already existing systems to get you access to these benefits and tools swiftly and simply as possible. It is AI and machine learning assisted management, and it has 3 ways of access: Excel, web, and mobile, to get you access to what you need, where and when. So it is multi-company, multi-currency, multi-group, multi-scenario, varied and versatile use cases that can be configured to individual needs. It is configurable with generally accepted accounting practices and the International Financial Reporting Standards. It is no-code configuration, which means a lot of these out-of-the-box functions are nice and easy to get to grips with and to get up. So the Epicor FP&A is a solution that addresses the very specific reporting, budgeting, forecasting, and consolidation needs of our makers, movers, and sellers. So what are some of the pain points that the FP&A addresses? The need to integrate directly with on-premises or cloud-deployed ERP systems. The need to set up a chart of accounts to reflect the company's way of reporting and budgeting. To create financial statements and ad hoc reports quickly and accurately. Need for good processing power within reports to cut out your wait times. The need to create budgets and forecasts with a high degree of accuracy. You need to compare prior period, current period, and budget period easily. The ability to be able to investigate and drill into the figures that you need to get answers to branching questions. The ability to move away from having to manually write reports and budgets using formula that become painful with advancing needs. You need to automate the entire consolidation process, including currency translations. The need to produce operational reports quickly, such as sales reports, accounts receivable, accounts payable reports, HR reports, and much more. And the need to edit and update your reports and forecasts on the fly as you need. Both of these, all of these items are addressed by the FP&A's machine learning and out-of-the-box approach, coming from both a set standard of tools that you will get, and also the more adaptive machine learning as well. So how can you interact with the FP&A? It is from 3 points. We have an Excel interface. Most people are familiar with Excel. It's a very commonplace program. So it doesn't need a whole new toolkit to learn how to use it from there. The web interface is designed to be neat and simple for ease of use. And it is designed to give you a kind of financial storybook. Gives you the big picture of your financial processes. So what's kind of the process behind what this is going to do? So it's going to take in your financial data, it's going to add it into the database within your system, transform and then output into the format that you need it to be, whether that be a functional report, a budget plan, or some kind of forecast. So it's going to take what you've got and then output it into nice, easy, digestible outputs. So just because it does have full FP&A suite doesn't mean it has to. It can just handle some financial reporting as well. It isn't, while it is a complex program, it doesn't mean it's complex to use. And just because it is favored by large enterprises doesn't mean that smaller businesses can't make use of it either. So these are the various kind of tiers of the FP&A offerings that we have, starting kind of the basic financial statements and reports, moving up through basic, standard, and enterprise tier as well. These will come with different kind of packages of tools and processes available. I'm sure Ashley can go over these in more detail in the Q&A if you have specific questions about what is covered within each package. This is kind of who's going to use various parts of the system, depending on your business needs. Multiple versions available to fit whatever requirements you might have. If you need something simple, it's basic plan, or if you need something much more comprehensive, there are the enterprise tiers as well. So a big part of this is the out-of-the-box reports and budget templates. It comes with 40 plus reports and templates from income statements to cash flow. You've got year loss, you've got your variance of budget forecast year to date, you've got balance sheets. It comes with a big kind of suite of ready to go reports that you can just kind of plug and play into your current systems. So why should you choose to look at Epicor FP&A? It's a very easy to use system. It's easy to get the data that you need. Has multi-use for piloting, budgeting, and it's nice and simple to get installed and up and running, saving you time on implementation. So implementation times, as everyone's time is valuable. So the statements and reports takes roughly 20 to 36 hours. The basic tier takes 36 to 52. Standard would be 54 to 70, and the more in-depth enterprise would be 100 to 116. There are some additional items that can add on to that as well. Sales an additional 40 to 80, advanced financials another 40 to 80, and then advanced consolidations is a little bit bigger at 200, but these are fairly quick implementation times, designed to be kind of the plug and play of these reports, so you can get them into your system and used as quickly as possible. So what makes FP&A different, and it is an accountant's preferred solution when comparing reporting capabilities. It is, again, designed for ease of use by both web and Excel for both interacting with it and manipulating the data that you'll get out of it. It is a powerful drill into your postings and invoices, finances. It has special chart of accounts configuration within Epicor without presenting any risks to your general ledger or any of your financial practices. And it is kind of got a bit of a safety net in enforcing best practices within reporting, budgeting, planning, and consolidation. And most of all, you will get a quick time to seeing a good amount of value from this system. Here to be stuck, excuse me all, having some technical difficulties. We're moving on through the slides. Here we go. So this is a quote from Phil Groves, Director of Finance and Accounting at Wellwell. So with static flat data, we used to budget at a very high level because it was simply too difficult to go deeper. But Epicor FP&A gives us an unmatched depth to budgeting. Now it's easy to drill down and see exactly where a number came from. And that gives management greater faith in the process. So at this point, I would like to hand over to Nick Stage from Epicor, who is going to give us a demo of Epicor FP&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right, let me go ahead and switch screens here. And can everyone see my screen? Got the year-over-year
Yes.
P&L, Ashley? Just want to confirm. Perfect. And I'm going to utilize some software to throw red boxes and squiggles and all kinds of lovely stuff on the screen so we all know what we're looking at. But welcome to FP&A. Again, my name is Nick Stage. I am a solution engineer here with Epicor. We'll be walking us through FP&A today. Before I dive into kind of my standard demo flow here, plan of attack is to cover the three main areas of functionality. That would be the financial reporting, the budgeting and forecasting, and lastly, the consolidations. So the lion's share of time is just learning the software for financial reporting, the main functionality there. That's where most of the interest comes in. There's some incredible budgeting and forecasting capabilities, as well as very flexible consolidations that we'll touch on as well and get into a fair amount of detail. Now, before I dive in big picture, I do want to say that essentially FP&A is a solution that is designed to pull folks out of Excel out of Outlook, out of Teams, and all of the workaround solutions that we're utilizing, and manage everything here securely within FP&A. Risk reduction is a big element of this particular solution. Now, when talking to my finance and accounting personnel, when I say out of Excel, there's usually a visible nervousness that I have to deal with. Please know that I would never take Excel away from my finance and accounting personnel. We absolutely have the ability to export throughout the system to Excel, as well as a mentioned plugin with some pretty great functionality that we'll speak to as well. But want to ultimately empower the finance and accounting personnel, and we'll talk to that throughout the demo today. So coming into our initial report here, I'm just going to work my way from top to bottom, left to right. I'm not overly creative. Creative and accounting typically don't go well together. So top to bottom, left to right is how we're going to do it. And starting at the top here, we have our year-over-year P&L overview. And specifically, I want to hone in on these dimensional filters. These are different dimensions that I have the ability to have this standard report and slice and dice. So if I have multiple entities, I can come in here and select which entity, the Americas, Europe, whatever it may be, that I want to run this standard report for, whether that's entity, department, multiple divisions. If I want to come in here and run this for different divisions and departments, all of those are dimensions as defined within FP&A. Time itself is in fact a dimension. So if I want to come in and run it for all of 2022, for all of Q2, let's go ahead and make sure my system is up and running wonderfully within the browser here. So I'm going to run it for all of Q2. And this is not a lengthy process. This is not a stand up, go take a bio break, grab some coffee. This is takes a couple seconds to go ahead and process. So we're seeing here with the updated information, I have it for 2023 Q2. My numbers are larger across the board. So pretty quick and easy to come in and make adjustments, do the slicing and dicing via these different dimensions. I'm going to take us back to a singular month just to keep our demo data a little more narrow for the conversation today. But ultimately, again, wanted to reiterate the speed. I grew up in solutions where it was, go grab some coffee. We're running reports. It's going to take a while. 45 minutes later, and I won't pick on certain solutions, but that's a thing of the past here. So coming down into the actual report, lots of elements I can share. We can see that we've got the actual prior years broken out in column. We have variance as a percentage. If I wanted to bring in a budget or a forecast column, I absolutely have that flexibility. From a formatting perspective, we can see we've got our blues, our bolds, our grays. That's controlled at the row level. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we can obviously pretty this up to match your corporate colors, your design, anything that you would want along those lines. Coming down to the bottom here, I do want to also highlight very quickly, we have the ability to bring in all kinds of additional data for our reports. So we're seeing gross margin percentage, current ratio, but we can bring in non-financial data, asset turnover, head count, for example, as we do have the ability to track statistical accounts. So all kinds of information can be displayed in these different reports and how we want to view those. Now, all of that is wonderful, but not what I would call exciting. Where it gets a little exciting is I have the ability to drill down into the details. So if I come into my sales service machine line item, I can right click, and there's two flavors for drilling down here. The first flavor is a breakout of all of my legal entities, and I can see every journal transaction that rolls up under each one of those entities. The second flavor is a breakdown of all of the different dimensions in this particular report. Now, I mentioned the dimensional filters along the top of the report here. I can slice and dice there. Here is an expanded view of all of the different dimensional filters that I can go ahead and view things. Now, I can have all of these up top if that's what I wanted to do, but it gets a little busy. It's not as visually appealing if I have 45 options to go ahead and drill down and slice and dice from the top. So when we drill down, we have those additional options. So if we want to go ahead and say, we have these three legal entities, 1, 2, 3 up here, and I can see all the transactions behind that, and we'll do that drill down next. If I wanted to drill down by the dimensional entity, I should see those three entities broken out for me. Notice that does come over with all of the same formatting. I've got my same columns, actuals, actual prior year, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a breakout of Epic 03, Epic A, and Epic 06, breaking out our different entities. So from this view, I can export to Excel. Again, we're going to see the ability to export throughout the entirety of the solution. I can also pivot from this particular dimensional view to say, show me everything for that line item broken out by customer. So this is, again, referencing a different dimension, and I can pivot from entity to customer, and here is now a breakout of all of my customers. Again, I can export this and do whatever it is that I want to. So a nice view to go ahead and utilize some of those dimensional slicing and dicing capabilities. Again, exciting, but the best of the best, if you will, is drilling down into every transaction for a given entity. So if I pick this Epicor 3 entity, quick reminder, FP&A is in the cloud. We can connect to on-prem, we can connect to other cloud solutions, we can connect to other ERPs. But I wanted to point out we are in a browser today. I have my report, and then when I drill down into all of those transactions, I simply have a separate tab for all of that detail. So I don't need to come back here, rerun and update my report. I've just got a new tab with all of the journal entry transactions rolled up for that particular line item under the chosen entity. Now, when I click into my line items here, we're going to get a couple different things that are going to happen. We can see on the bottom here, we get all kinds of additional detail. And then up here, regarding that detail specifically, we have the ability to view it a couple different ways. So first and foremost, let's look at what is the item here. We can see we've got some GL information being displayed, debits, credits. As I scroll to the right, we can see some IT connectivity information over there. So some source information. I want to note that this information, what's being pulled into these columns, can be configured. Just like working in Core Kinetic for financials, we absolutely have the ability to configure pretty much everything within this solution as far as what we're drilling to and what information is presented. Now, as far as the information being presented, let's switch views from those debits and credits, my heart be still, as far as the debit and credit information, into some more detail here. So this is a sales journal example that I'm drilling into. And now we can see the invoice number, order number, customer number, part number, all kinds of rich detail. Again, this can be configured for the information that's most pertinent to your organization, how you want that to be displayed. But I'm going to scroll to the right here slowly so we can kind of get a quick look at anything and everything that can be brought here. I'm not even a third of the way through. There's tons and tons of rich data that we have access to. I'm just going to whip it over here so you can see all the different columns. Again, just to reiterate that point, we can, of course, export to Excel. I'll stop saying that eventually, I promise. But like I said, we can do that throughout the entirety of that solution. Now, I prefer the next view, which is a column view of that same information. Again, invoice number, order number, customer number, part number, et cetera, just displayed in that column format. And then ultimately, the best of the best, the creme de la creme, is opening source. That is a drill down directly into the source transaction. Now, before I click that, I want to take us back to our core report here, just because at month end, time is short. We are trying to accomplish so much in a short time frame, trying to get everything locked down, closed up, good to go. The number of clicks absolutely matters. So very quickly, just want to walk through an exercise. How many clicks does this take to take us from the top level all the way to the bottom? 1 click to go ahead and right click on the item in question. 2 to select the entity that we're drilling to. That's going to pop open this tab. I can come in here, select a row. That would be a 3rd click, and then 4 clicks to go ahead and hit that open source button. And that's going to pull me directly into Kinetic, into the AR invoice tracker for this sales journal. And that is less than a handful of clicks to go from that top level P&L statement down into the AR invoice tracker, the very debits and credits of any transaction that I'm looking into. So a lot of power, my line item detail right here. And now I'm in Kinetic. This presentation isn't for Kinetic purposes, but just to put a bow on everything really nicely, I want to highlight the Explorer view. And this is in the latest couple releases, I think the last 2 releases, and this is still a growing functionality. The Explorer view highlights the ability to visualize transactions flowing through our system. So I can say, here is that AR invoice tracker that I drilled into for this invoice. If I want to look back at the shipment or the order, not only can I visualize that, I can click into that and then drill into that order. And now I'm looking at that order very quickly and easily. So the navigability is the word I'll use for my fishermen, my boaters. Software, yeah, sure, we're going to use navigability to go ahead and go from that top level P&L down into the details within Kinetic. So we'll take us back into core FP&A functionality rather than Kinetic, just to focus today's conversation. But love to highlight less than a handful of clicks from that top level P&L down into those details. All right, other functionality, aside from the drill down, which is probably my personal favorite for variance analysis, having been a financial analyst, having been in the trenches and gone through month end and year end close, that functionality is my favorite. But I want to continue to highlight other functionality here. If we move our attention to the top right portion of the screen here, notice that I am in the system as the CEO for today. So we do have named user solution here. And in this particular case, I have the keys to the kingdom. I have full throttle access as the CEO. We do absolutely have the ability to have pared down users coming in here. If you don't want them to be able to see either the comprehensive financials or different departments, we have the ability to set that up from a security access standpoint. Other functionality, we have the ability to bring in some visualizations. Now, this is more powerful, and I'll touch on this in budgeting and forecasting. But if I want to click into my sales service machine line item, we can get a breakout of the total year. If we click on the other income, again, based on what line I'm clicking into, it's going to show me the actuals, for the whole year. And we can very quickly and easily see, okay, is there a seasonality that we should be seeing or that we're not seeing? Should it be flat? And it's not. This, again, can drive some of that quick visuals to get into variance analysis. What am I seeing or not seeing that I should or shouldn't be seeing? As far as the refreshing ability here, we do have the ability to update our reports. This is also a quick note regarding something we saw on the presentation previously. This is not live data within FP&A. We take a copy overnight of everything that is in Core Kinetic or other ERPs, even a spreadsheet, everything we're pulling from. We take a copy of that and we transform the data via the processes here. Now, this is my one personal knock on the solution. I hope that in the future, as we continue to evolve with this, that there is a more live functionality. But currently, as it stands, there's an overnight refresh. And the only time this matters truly for financial reporting would typically be around, again, month end. So 95, 98% of the time, not having a live connection doesn't really matter for financial reporting. However, during that month close period, if I'm coming in and saying, I want to run my financials and I want to see, oh man, we forgot to post the accrual for Department 40. I want to be able to go in, post the accrual for Department 40, come back out here, rerun my reports and see that the appropriate result is now showing on my financials. Now, the only hitch in the giddy up in making that happen is we have a refresh button. It's not live. We do have to hit that refresh. It is not a lengthy process to go ahead and do that. Again, similar to updating the reports, this is not a go get a coffee, go take a bio break exercise, but it is not live. So I do want to articulate that appropriately. But again, month close, it's the only time, and it's a minor hitch in the giddy up, a couple, 2, 3, 5 minutes, depending on the amount of data. And it's not grabbing all the data from all time. Now I'm getting over my depth as far as IT tech terminology and technology, but this is not grabbing all of the data from the beginning of time to update that and transform that through FP&A. It's just saying, okay, based on the last overnight refresh, what have we updated? So it's a pretty quick grab of that information for those month close processes. Again, a minor hitch in the giddy up, but I do want to articulate that. Other functionality here in the top right, we do have the ability to export to Excel. Now that comes also in 2 flavors. The first flavor, I'm going to go ahead and pop open here, is a hard-coded dump of the data from FP&A directly into Excel. So we're seeing as I click into my beloved sales service machine line item that I spend all my time talking about, up in the formula bar here, we can see the hard-coded number that has been dropped into Excel. Now, once we're in Excel, sky's the limit for anything and everything that your team wants to do and can do with that data. Notice it does come over with the formatting, which is nice. We have all of the information brought here. But if you wanted to then build out separate analysis, separate formulas, templates to then transform the data any way you want to, you certainly have that capability. Now, I would stress for risk management, for trying to standardize processes to take everything within FP&A. But again, I'm not going to take Excel away from my accounting and finance professionals. The other flavor of Excel, and I'm going to pull over a different tab here from a different instance, is via this Epicor FP&A plugin along the top here. And you can see that I have some functionality along the right. If I click into that same sales service machine line item, notice up in the formula bar here, we now have a formula-driven process for EFPA.getReport, and we're pulling in the appropriate report information. Now, the big element here is if we remember those dimensional filters that were on top of our report, we have the ability to utilize those same dimensional filters here within Excel, and I can update that information, refresh that information accordingly. Additionally, if I want to drop in other reports, so here in my finance reports, I've got different balance sheets, different income statements. If I want to drop those into Excel, make comparisons, formulas, whatever between those, like once we're in Excel, again, the sky's the limit. I have lived and breathed in Excel historically. I have, a pretty good idea of what it's capable of and what a playground that can be for everybody. But the functionality to reference all of that FP&A information cleanly, have that filtered, bring that into Excel for you to play with, very powerful. The other big element for this FP&A plugin is the ability, if your organization utilizes BAQs, we can query BAQs to bring that data directly into Excel as well. So that's something that folks occasionally get pretty excited about. Now, coming back into our report here, we're going to go ahead and go over here and speak to the distribution of reports. Now, two methods of distributions. We can have a one-time blast, a share of the given reports, and that can say, who do I want to send this to? Check the boxes, add other emails as necessary, write the subject and body of my email, and go ahead and send that off as a one-time blast. As far as formatting, PDF, Excel, standard elements, if you've got something really goofy, we can talk, but ultimately, pretty standard report distribution elements. That's a one-time blast. Now, if I want my reports waiting for me Monday morning, coming in, having my coffee, I want, a full package ready to go, we can absolutely do that as well. So we're seeing that I can run reports and have those waiting for me daily, weekly, monthly, or on a manual cadence. If you have like a 4-4-5 fiscal calendar, something along those lines that we can align to, yeah, we can support that as well. So really nice to be able to automate the production of those reports, distribute those as desired. Now, if we want to go ahead and pop the hood here, I want to step back and say in prior parts of my career, having been around reporting from a lot of different angles, I have been in organizations where the process was to reach out to IT anytime I needed a new report and say, here's what I'm looking for. And ultimately, 6 months and 50 emails back and forth later, I would get a report eventually, and it would likely look nothing like what I actually wanted and or needed. I share that story, though, just in the interest of understanding that this solution empowers our finance and accounting personnel with no need for IT intervention. And it's very simple. Everything is driven by our dimensions, columns, and rows. So we have the ability to come in here, make changes to the reports as we see fit. So I mentioned the dimensional filters on the top of the report there. Here is where I have that ability to add additional dimensional filters. Simply check the box on those dimensions. Now, the columns, again, actuals, actual prior year, variances, I told you I can bring in budgets and forecast, other different elements. And I'll show some sample reports towards the end of the day when we talk consolidations, where these aren't limited in any way, shape, or form. If I want different entities to be my columns, I can do that. If I want different months for a 12-month rolling forecast or report of some kind, I can do that as well. So full flexibility in building out those columns. And then the rows, we can see we've got all of our detail breaking out our line items as far as the account structure, and we'll get into that with dimensions and definitions in a little bit. The other thing I want to point out here is the ability to control the formatting at that row level. But I have the ability to come in here, edit rows, create new rows, group things, duplicate. Ultimately, there's two approaches to creating a new report within FP&A. Either take something that currently exists and tweak it with these tools here, or build something entirely from scratch. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a couple minutes. So that is the process of kind of popping the hood here, coming in and making those adjustments via those dimensions, columns, and rows. And the way I'll phrase this here is this is a lot like working in Excel in the sense that you're not going to be an expert in 2 to 3 weeks, probably not even 2 to 3 months, but it's intuitive enough that you can come in here, learn to play with it. You're going to get better. I mean, I'm in this solution all the time, and I am always learning all kinds of new tips, tricks, tools that are out here to make life easier. So that is just a quick view of our financial reporting overview. What I'm going to go ahead and do is take us to the home page. Now, we were in financial reporting specifically. We're going to step back to the broader solution and the capabilities here. Just like within Core Kinetic, everything here can be configured. I've got multiple tabs, including my demo home, which is where we are right now. I can create multiple tabs. I can have, just one tab, however I want to view this. We have the flexibility. So if we want KPIs, charts, graphs, pretty colors, we absolutely can do that. Here we can see my consolidation KPIs for different ways of viewing all the different information. We can see I've got a listing of my consolidation reports here. So just a listing of everything that's most relevant for my consolidation process. I can bring in a sales information dashboard, a financials dashboard. Really, there's a lot of different ways I can view the information. It's configurable just like within Core Kinetic here at FP&A to how many tabs I want, how I want to view that. And again, I'm in as the CEO for full throttle access. We can pare this down for individual users, specifically if we want to focus in on my reports listing here, and I've got just a tree structure to go ahead and view that. If I didn't have access to all of the information, all the same information, this would be a much shorter list of all the reports that I have access to. So I want to reiterate that we have those different levels of security that can be set up. Now, we covered the KPIs, the charts and graphs. We have those. We do also have communication built throughout the solution. This becomes more important for budgeting and forecasting. But you see here, we have a note regarding employee compensable leave. If we also have something, I believe, yep, so IFRS 16, as far as communication for those personnel who are dealing with reporting, anything that is most relevant to them, quick notifications to be aware of, keep those on your dashboard for easy viewing. We also have assignments. This is related to budgeting and forecasting. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And I've already reiterated the reports functionality. Notice we can filter that a couple different ways. But the big element we're going to touch on in just another minute or two is starting with a new report from scratch. So again, 2 ways to create reports: take something that currently exists and tweak it, or start from scratch. That is the start from scratch button. Before I do that, I want to go ahead and pop the hood here on the broader solution of FP&A. Specifically, I'm going to take us into the dimensions. And as I do this, I want to reiterate, as per the presentation we already saw, that FP&A has its own implementation process. This is not a solution we just flip the switch and say, all right, here you go, good luck, figure it out. There is absolutely an implementation process to go ahead and get this established, understanding what you want your data to do, the transformations that need to occur. And a lot of this is defined via the dimensions. So this first dimension we have is accounts. And if we look at financials specifically, we can see we've got a balance sheet, income statement. Down here, we've got a cash flow, lots of different reports. Let's focus on that income statement, though. That was the report style we were looking at previously. If I go ahead and hit expand all, we can see the dimensional tree structure that is driving all of our reporting. So we're seeing here the net income before taxes, operating income, gross profit, sales and revenue, sales service machine, my favorite line item we always come back to. Here, in fact, are all of the GL accounts that roll up into that individual line item. So the dimensions are here to control all of those standardized reporting elements throughout the entirety of the organization. Now, without going down a complete rabbit hole, the dimensions are driving the standard formatting. That does not mean that in an individual report, I don't have the flexibility to create my own account groupings, my own line items, all of those different elements. We can do that, but that gets into a broader question of report management. As you're adding new accounts, as you're potentially going through acquisitions, other things that happen pretty regularly for different organizations, do you want to have to be updating just your dimensions that then roll out to all of the reports, or do you want to have to manage 25 individual reports? And it's a balance. It's, there's no right or wrong answer, but just that's more of a theory discussion as how you want to go ahead and manage that. But as far as the standardized elements, that's controlled here at the dimensional level. Specifically, again, we're looking at the account structure. The other thing I want to very quickly touch on, and this is kind of alluding to our consolidations conversation. If I click into each individual account line item, notice that we have member properties displayed along the right side here. Now we're getting pretty deep in the weeds. The only element I want to touch on, though, in particular here is the intercompany checkbox. Now, this, again, is for consolidation purposes. Here at the individual account level, we track which accounts need to be considered for consolidation purposes. So the 4,000 account has that checkbox checked. Yeah, we're going to say it that way. Checkbox checked. So then we have our 4,008 here that we can see there is no check in the checkbox for that particular account. We're going to circle back to that as part of the consolidation conversation, but I wanted to touch on that here at the dimensional level. Now, as I mentioned previously, dimensions are defined as part of that implementation process. We figure out how we want to bring in different information. Currency is a dimension. Customer is a dimension. Employees could be a dimension. Entities are dimensions. All of these are defined that allow us to then slice and dice with our reports on the tail end. So that is the dimensional conversation I wanted to have very quickly. The other element I wanted to touch on are business rules. And before I do that, again, I want to note that a lot of the times I'm talking to smaller organizations that are coming out of Excel, coming out of QuickBooks, coming out of other solutions where they've had to have all kinds of different workarounds for workarounds. I've been there, I've done that, I understand. A part of the risk reduction here within FP&A is managing calculations within this particular solution via the business rules. Business rules is essentially housing all of those calculations that are driving our financial reporting as well as our budgeting and forecasting. Consolidations has its own rules set. We'll touch on that later. But for financial reporting, as well as the budgeting and forecasting, anytime we've got equations, anytime we've got math occurring within the system, it's managed here at the business rules level. So we can see we've got a 401k calculation, we've got a commission calculation, we've got different payroll tax calculations. All of those are housed in the business rules. And again, just reiterating, I've lived and breathed in Excel. I have locked down tabs. I have locked down entire spreadsheet workbooks, using the right terminology there. I have put passwords on it, and the reality is somebody's going to break it. It doesn't take more than a couple seconds to go to Google and say, how do I unlock a locked file in Excel? It's very doable. It's always a risk, and then one fat finger, and I've got chubby fingers occasionally, that will accidentally break a formula and be the difference between thousands of dollars being displayed inappropriately. So having that risk reduction, having those formulas stored within FP&A is a big risk reduction element. All right, I'm going to take a deep breath here, make sure we covered all of our financial reporting. We saw the drill down capabilities. We saw the slicing and dicing. We touched on the dimensions. We touched on the business rules. I still need to create a new report from scratch. That was the big one here. So down at the bottom, we're going to go ahead and click that new button. And very quickly, we're going to give it a name, and we're going to say, okay, what kind of a report are we going to go ahead and create today? Now we have a list of options. Notice that we have an income statement, cash flow, balance sheet, all kinds of standardized reports we can create. We're going to stick with that income statement. Before I hit apply, though, I want to harken back to just a couple seconds ago when we were looking at those dimensions. This list should look familiar, because this list is a direct pull from our dimensions. It's essentially saying we're going to create a report from scratch based on our dimensional setup for the account structure. So we're going to stick with that income statement because we've seen some of the line items, we've seen the formatting, and then we can define a few other things. What scenario are we creating this report for? Is this for a budget, a forecast, actuals? We'll stick with actuals. Do I want to look at that yearly or monthly? Let's stick it with monthly for now. And then what do I want to compare that to? Well, actuals to actuals may not be the most compelling report of all time. So let's go ahead and stick with actuals versus budget. And then we're going to go crazy this morning. We're going to check all the boxes. We're going to bring in the prior year actuals. Let's do it. Show variances, variance as a percentage. Sure. Bring in year to date, fiscal year to date, all the above. Hit save and view. So ultimately that was, we'll ballpark less than 2 minutes. And I have my raw report. Now my raw report is showing for 2025 and my demo data doesn't go that far out. So let's go ahead and run it for all of 2021, for example. Simply update my dimension of time, and here is all of my data. So this is that raw output via the dimensions for every single line item, and I can start building my report from scratch. So I can come in here, hit edit, pop that hood, and we again, via those dimensions, columns, and rows, can start defining what filters do I want to bring in to go ahead and manage this report. Maybe if I look at columns, okay, is this enough columns? Is this too many columns? How do I want to go ahead and manage that? We have lots of flexibility. And then at the rows, here we can see we've got just the blast of here is everything that rolls up under your current income statement structure. And ultimately, I can say, let me start building this out line by line and then tying that out to what is currently in my income statement format. So that is the second process for creating a report. You can start from scratch, or you can take something that exists and tweak it. So wanted to highlight how quick and easy it is to get the ball rolling on that process. Again, no IT intervention. That's a big element for me. One moment before I dive into budgeting and forecasting. Got to get my caffeine fix. I'm not a coffee guy. At any rate, as far as budgeting and forecasting is concerned, want to reiterate we have our assignments broken out down here. Again, I am in the system as the CEO, full throttle access for anything and everything. But we can pop the hood here along the left and into the organization and workflow. And our whole method here is essentially to take the budget and forecast and break it down into bite-sized pieces that are templates to be filled out by the appropriate personnel throughout the organization. Now we can do top-down forecasting and budgeting. We can do bottom-up. There's full flexibility in how you want to build that out. But just to understand the process here, we can have different processes for financials, sales, HR, different hierarchies as desired, and different workflows that we can select from, and I'll show a different view of that. But ultimately, for the CEO role that I'm in right now, you can see I have these tasks. These are those bite-sized pieces of the budget or forecast that we're going to build up to create the total report. And we can see as the CEO, I have the final commit with a due date of 10/31. If we go down to the CFO in this particular case, we can see those are the bite-sized pieces that the CFO will be working on, and they have a status of input and approve. Again, big picture, pulling folks out of Excel, out of Outlook. You're not looking for, okay, who's responsible for that, or where's that Microsoft Excel template, and when is that due by, and okay, did we set up notifications on our calendar? No, we can manage all of those processes here within FP&A. So that's a breakout of those processes and what that looks like from the templates. If we go to the workflow setup, you can see we've got workflows for budget 2021, sales budget 21, HR budget 21, same thing for 22. I'm not going to say them all. And then individual assignments are broken out. So that is all handled here at the organization and workflow. But ultimately, skipping ahead, what does that translate to? What does that look like? If we come down to my assignments, again, as the CEO, I've got it filtered currently for budget 2021. So if we jump into one of those bite-sized pieces, let's go ahead and take a look at how that can be presented. Now, coming in here, it's a little small, and I'll try to zoom in throughout here. I want to point out that first and foremost, we are looking at this from a GL perspective. Now, we don't need to look at it that way. I'll show an alternative in just a minute. But right now, we're entering information here for our 4,000, our revenue-based accounts. We're displaying some information here along the bottom for the costs related to that with our 5,000 accounts. But ultimately, we have our green and gold section. Go Packers. That wasn't my choice of colors. But again, go Packers. We have the ability to go ahead and enter our information right here. So as we click into the details here, and I'm going to do a halfway decent attempt of trying to zoom in here. If I click in the second line, notice in this second line, every single month except for April there is the same. I've got the 402,999, and April is an even 4,100,000. So we'll call that some slight seasonality for April every year for whatever's driving that. Point being, I have the ability to come in and enter and edit the information a couple different ways. So if I set the budget value and I say, okay, my budget currently is 8,500,000 and change. Let's say we know it's going to be an even 9 million. I can go ahead and update that. Notice what happened here. If I zoom back in, I entered the 9 million, and every month that was the same is now still the same. We can maintain our spreads. April has been proportionally updated, but every other month is now the 425,055. So we can enter the budget value and maintain the spread for that given line item. So that's one option. The other option is to come in and enter each month individually. We've entered our 9 million in total, but we're saying, hold on, April, we know we're at least going to be maybe 4.5. We can update that, and then that will push things back up to the budget level. So whether you're entering at the budget level, rolling that out via the spread, or entering the individual months, and then the total budget is updated accordingly, flexibility in how you want to utilize that. Now, of course, as I've mentioned previously, and I'll say it one more time, we can export to Excel. As part of that, we do have the ability to have comments. And if we were to export this, the comment would show up in Excel in the same format with our little, yellow caret flag in the top right there. But we have the always creative my comments comment. Ability to have communication here within the system is key. Now, we do have audit capabilities of who did what, when, where. I'd like to think on more collaborative teams, we can just say, hey, updated this, or based on the email from this date, throw that in the comments. We can track the information, track the updates, what's changing within the system. So flexibility and how you want to go ahead and utilize that as far as your communication that is built throughout. Now, the other element here, and speaking to my past, having built a budgeting and forecasting and financial reporting solution in Excel, I don't recommend it. You can do it. I've done it. Don't recommend it. That being said, more often than not, especially with budgeting and forecasting, you would utilize multiple tabs on a spreadsheet to ultimately have information that rolls up to that top level. Well, we have that same functionality with these blue boxes here along the left side. So if we look at our sales for 2-year contracts, as an example, I can go ahead and say, for this given row, show me the backup spreadsheet that rolls up to that top level. So we've got all kinds of detail here. And again, I am out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, so we've got some more football references. Bear with me. We can see that we've got the Bears game revenue at $50. Well, they can't get any worse than they were last year, so we'll knock them up to $75. Packers game revenue, 700,000. We're going to have a good year next year, I think. So we're going to go ahead and up that to 800,000 or 80,000. No, I guess we're going to tank. We're going to keep it at 80. And then the Vikings, they don't have a quarterback yet, so let's put them also at 75. Just to see what they can do. So I've updated my numbers for the different game revenues, and ultimately I can come in here and hit update source. And all of this is going to roll, if I want it to, by hitting yes, roll up into that individual row for my sales 2-year contracts. Here in April, we see the 80,000 solely from the Packers, and the 150 is broken up between the 75 and the 75. So we have those layers of communication and layers of data that roll up into that forecasting process. So the ability to manage that all here within FP&A is particularly advantageous. Again, if you want to put it into Excel, you have that capability. Now, other functionality within this particular space, we can bring in the visualizations, just like I mentioned for financial reporting. I can bring in visualizations along the bottom here, and we're seeing that I can view it a couple different ways. It's put into a lovely chart for me. We can see the budget for the prior year, the current budget, the actual prior year. That's displayed based on what area I'm clicking into. So data is kind of all over the place, and we can see those different elements. And once we're looking at it with this particular visual tool set, unlike within financial reporting, we have additional tools here that allow us to make changes. So the big element here is I have the ability to make adjustments. I can say I want this total budget value to be whatever it is that I want it to be. And then I have a couple different methods. I can either distribute it evenly, or I can base it on a scenario. Now, these scenarios can be created for my demo environment. I've got the budget for the prior year, the current budget, the actual prior year. Typically, we'd see something like show me a 2% increase year over year, show me a 7% increase or a 2% decrease, whatever it may be. You can create those different scenarios and ultimately say, make the adjustment there and apply that spread as I see fit. We can also create different predictions via this tool set. So a lot of capability. Could dive into a full session of just this functionality for individual use cases, but I want to keep it high level for today. We've got a lot more to cover, but ultimately wanted to highlight our different tool sets for bringing all of that information in. Now, stepping back big picture, one last thing before I leave this screen, we do have the ability to edit everything just like within the financial reporting. No IT needed. I can come in and make changes to these templates, assuming you want security access to do that. And this is, again, this particular template that we're looking at is driven by the GL account structure. Now, what if we wanted to involve personnel who maybe don't speak GL? And I don't want to pick on any particular branch of the organization, but we'll pick on sales and say maybe the sales folks don't know the GL account structure the way we'd like everyone to. And that's normal. That's fine. But sales folks do know their customers and they do know their products. What if we want them to provide that information for us? Well, we have the capability to create different templates that drive our budgeting and forecasting. And ultimately, we know that this will roll up to the budget and forecast, but we can still enter the information here at Penny Lane's level, which if you're paying really close attention, Penny Lane is my salesperson and my CFO, but we're going to let that go for demo data purposes. We can see here though, I've got a breakout of all of the companies that fall under Penny Lane in this particular view. So we've got Ace Molding, Barristan Engineering, and we've got all of my details broken out for that particular customer. But we can go a layer deeper here. If I right click into Barristan Engineering, because I'm a Game of Thrones fan, I have the enter product quantity option. So I can go ahead and drill to the product quantity specifically for Barristan Engineering. And here are all of the individual products broken out. So now I, Penny Lane, may not speak GL, but I do, again, know my customers, know my products. I can forecast or budget for what I expect to sell throughout the year. And again, this rolls up on the tail end. So whether it's top-down budgeting and forecasting or bottom-up, we have the flexibility to build out these templates to capture that information. Now, I stay out of licensing conversations just because that doesn't have to do with how the solution can help you, and that's my job. But as far as licensing is concerned, again, named users, if you want to try and mitigate how many users you have in the system, I've been a financial analyst. I've overseen 20 plus individual departments for an organization. information. Maybe I, the financial analyst, have access to everything and I can export these templates to be filled out to my personnel. So we only have 5 people in FP&A rather than 35. So different strategies and how you utilize the solution, how much autonomy everyone can handle, how much access everyone needs. Lots of flexibility for that. But I wanted to point out from a budgeting and forecasting standpoint, it's not just here at the GL level. We can bring in layers and layers of information, and you've seen the communication throughout that process. All right, so that was budgeting and forecasting. We've already touched on the business rules, again, driving some of those calculations. We do have unlimited scenarios is the other thing I'll add here. So you're seeing actual forecast budget, different years broken out. The other two I'll point out is if you want to have, run a scenario for COVID 2.0 or an emergency loan to make it through the end of the year, whatever it may be, we're not going to penalize you and say you can only have 5 scenarios or you got to pay more. It's the unlimited scenarios. If you guys have the time to go ahead and create these and manage them, wonderful, go for it. More power to you. That wraps up the budgeting and forecasting aspect. The last thing for today then is jumping over to consolidation. So consolidations is its own special tool set. And accordingly, we have a workspace just for that. So we're seeing here, I've got a breakout of a number of different entities, the alpha, beta, gamma, delta, omega, and theta entities. All I have to do is organize it in groups if I want to for the different entities. If I have different groupings, again, we can handle really complex situations, different layers of groupings. We're going to keep it real simple. All I have to do is come in here and hit run consolidation. When I run that consolidation process, it's going to produce information here for the intercompany matching, which is a simple red light, green light exercise. I can come in here and notice I do have the ability to filter by time, scenario, currency, but I can come in here and click on the individual red lights and green lights. Green light means good. There are no problems. So for the alpha entity in the balance sheet, those individual accounts that need to match are matching and there is no difference. If I click over to the income statement, however, we're getting a red light, meaning there are some details here that need to be reviewed. Now, when we talked about the dimensions earlier today, I said that at the individual account level, there's simply a checkbox defining, hey, this individual account needs to be considered for intercompany consolidations. And that's important because I come down here via this intercompany matching functioning area, and we see a breakout not only for the entities, but the individual accounts. It's calling it out at that level. And you can see we've got some differences here. So we've got a difference of only $1. That's a rounding difference that's coming through. Now, if I wanted to get rid of that, I could put a max difference, if it's under $5, under $50, whatever your threshold is. We're not going to worry about that for consolidation purposes, depending on the size of your organization. You can set that threshold, but we're seeing a rounding difference for these accounts. But if we look at specifically the 7503, we're seeing, hey, there is actually a material difference here of the 690,000, but we've identified that now to the alpha and the gamma entities, specifically account 7503. Now, I, as the corporate accountant or analyst or whatever position comes in and fixes all this stuff for consolidations, have very clearly identified this is the account. These are the entities that I need to go make an adjustment for. I go make my adjustment. I go fix it and then rerun my consolidation and we get green lights. So that is how simple everything is made via our tool set here for consolidation within FP&A. Now, other functionality within this particular area, we do have the ability to make over-the-top journal entries. Now, from an audit perspective, that makes what little hair I have stand up on the back of my neck. But we do have the ability for internal reporting. That could be, internal reporting, or I think some goodwill. Occasionally, that's a use case for the ability to have journal entries without backing in the financial system. So again, it's functionality we offer. I would watch it, control it, lock it down via the security, but it is absolutely there for you to use. And then settings. So we talked about the business rules that are driving our financial reporting, that are driving our budgeting and forecasting. Consolidations has its own rules to go ahead and manage those processes. Those are housed here within the settings area. So we have our intercompany matching rules, journal rates, FX rules, consolidation rules. All of this is driving the consolidation process that ultimately then is translated to the intercompany matching. That makes things very simple and well-defined for somebody to come in and make fixes to consolidate appropriately. So really streamlines the processes quite nicely. So that is the consolidation process. Other things I want to touch on very quickly as we're nearly at the top of the hour. We do have the ability to reference, just like within Core Kinetic, we have help built into FP&A. So if you didn't see that in the top right there, we've got a little question mark that I clicked into, and we've got a help breakout here for all of the different areas that I can click into. There's some how-to videos, pretty comprehensive help. But ultimately, I'll defer to the fact that we have an implementation process for this product. You're going to learn about it. You're going to get your hands dirty into it. And ultimately, as you've seen, once it's set up, there's no need for IT intervention. Accounting and finance personnel are empowered by the tools and access that we have here. All right, last thing I want to show before we kick things to Q&A, I'm going to go and show some other reports that I said I would. So P&L by entity, just to show the fact that we have the ability to have different columns. So here are the columns broken out by entity. And this is great from a consolidation perspective to see the cancellation, the eliminations that are occurring. So here we can identify very quickly within the alpha entity account 4403, we are cleanly and clearly seeing that 162,000 in the alpha, and we see the elimination there occurring. As we scroll down, we can again continue to see those breakouts. Now here's the beta 5404 and the elimination occurring there. So the ability to visualize this, same functionality to drop in all of our dimensional filters. So that's one view I wanted to share. And the other one I'll throw up very quickly for everybody is the P&L 12 months. I mentioned that, if we wanted a rolling forecast of some variety, we wanted to have our months as our columns, we can do that. And you're seeing that here with a breakout of those months. And notice, again, we can kind of, put a bunch of dimensional filters, kind of little visually overwhelming with the number of filters we can just start dropping up here. But wanted to highlight again our ability to display those reports in a multitude of ways. I'll step back now and open the floor. Ashley, any questions that may have come through that we can attempt to address, or we're going to take them live? I'm good for whatever.